Welcome to Coastal Connection. Embrace the power with Kathryn, Guylay. We welcome Miss Idaho. What's up?
Oh, I love it. You see
Hell
me
yeah.
dancing to your music. Congratulations, you guys, on a great show. I've been watching every single show. I've been loving it. I am loving how much fun you guys have with this. Just keep it up.
Oh yeah, and we appreciate you coming on. Me and Mike G are in the house here in Tampa, and we know you're up in Cole, Idaho. Mike was making jokes earlier about potatoes, but we're gonna leave that alone.
Idaho potatoes.
Bring on the jokes.
All right, so I am tracking that. You have an MBA and you were a businesswoman, and you've converted to like this naturalist, and I call you a naturalist out of my true heart, is because you're my Henry David Thoreau, that everybody needs nature. And so you have touched a lot of things. So right now, kind of give everybody out here a little background on where you're from and what you're about, and then we'll go further and ask you a couple questions.
Sure, I'd be delighted. I'm so honored to be here with you guys. Again, you're so much fun. I love your show. I love what you're all about. So Vince and I were talking in the pre-interview chat. We go back to the Midwest. So I was actually born in Milwaukee, and I sort of grew up in Chicago and decided it was way too cold, which is really funny. And I was like, I just could not wait to get out of there. So then I went to school and I worked in places like Georgia and Texas and Mexico. And then I became an international consultant. And then I started to work on crazy, crazy projects across many, many time zones. And then I had my little kiddos. So my daughter was born in the year 2000. And that's important because the year 2000 is when we start to actually have these statistics that say that 1 out of 3 children born in that year will develop diabetes. 2000 was before Michelle Obama and her amazing campaign with, Let's Move and that whole initiative. It was before Michael Pollan really was famous for his books about food and getting back to the earth and back to nature. It was before Jamie Oliver and what he was doing with walking across school stages and dumping entire wheelbarrows of sugar on the stage and saying, this is what children are consuming on an annual basis. So I say all of that because it's those like points in our lives, whether it's, in my case, growing up in the household of a biochemist who constantly talked to me about science and nutrition, to having my own kids and then realizing if I wasn't going to be part of making a change, who was, for this generation. And then here we are in Idaho. We moved out here about 10 years ago, to really experience more of nature, because we can talk about food, we can talk about movement, we can talk about things that we can do for our mental state, but also nature, whether it's a patch of a sky from a city park, or it's looking at a blade of grass or a vast mountainscape. Nature is a really important part of how we get ourselves back into balance. And to me, that's what healing really is.
Yeah, and Thoreau says we can never have enough nature. So I realize that you touched on the sugar and the diabetes thing, and it's a growing epidemic in America, and we don't take it serious enough. And I think that you're doing nonprofit work, and you brought it up prior to us getting on this about trying to get healthier choices, and in the schools get healthier choices. So let me hear a little bit about the nonprofit work you're doing and what you're trying to do to make a difference in the community.
Sure. So Nurture was founded in 2008, and our mission is about having hands-on education to make nutrition fun. So how do you do that? Well, I'm going to kind of weave what you were talking about with sugar into how do you make something fun that has to do with nutrition. First off, you could never walk into a schoolroom and tell all the children that they were eating cookies and that was bad, or that chocolate milk that they're sipping on is bad. So one of the important things that we do at Nurture is we have a specific vocabulary. We talk about go foods that give you energy and they make you, do well in sports and do well on your tests. And then we talk about slow foods that kind of, make us not feel so good. Sometimes we can get a little bit sick when we eat too much, and then we feel kind of sleepy and we don't run so fast. So it's kind of about building a little bit of rapport with the kids, but it's also about getting them involved. So if you were to walk into a nutrition lesson that I was giving, I would probably not be standing at the front of the room. In fact, you'd be like, what is going on in here? Because kids would be like running around and consulting with each other. For sugar, what I do is I have these games where I bring in different food items I teach kids that 4 grams of sugar is a teaspoon, and then I teach them how to read labels. And then what we do is we go around, we have stations, and the kids have these little sugar cubes, which are also a teaspoon. And they're like trying to figure out like how many sugar cubes or 4 grams per cube or per teaspoon is in this item. And they'll be like consulting with each other, and they'll be peeking at the other kids' table. So they're really involved, and that's how they learn. The best thing, guys, is that I typically save the big Mountain Dew for the teacher. And by then, the kids have gotten pretty smart, and they, of course, love to know more than their teachers, right? And so I give them the answer, which, by the way, is 77 grams. So the teacher basically has to build this pyramid of sugar cubes as the kids are watching on, and they're like, more, more, more. So if you were observing this room, you'd be like, what is going on here? But afterwards, if you were to talk to those kids, most kids would say on their own, from their own choice, because of their own education and inspiration from that lesson, they're probably not going to be drinking a lot of Mountain Dew. They might be choosing something else, maybe water, and maybe that one cookie with lunch or something. So it's about inspiration, education, and choice, but of course involving the kids. So that's what Nurture is about.
So, a question, Kathryn. So you pretty much use psychological things to show them that it's not good for you, all the sugar and stuff like that, and show them physically that things are breaking apart, and that's what happens in your body. So pretty much it's elements you're entering in the kid's mind where they can grow up and feel like, okay, I know that's not good for me, and that's good for me, and which I find, excuse me, very well, because kids start small. When you start them small and you teach them things, they're going to develop knowing some other things as well. So that's where you're coming in. You're portraying that good health, good things, better living, longer life. So that makes sense. And also, does that inspire you writing your books? I know you write books as well, correct?
Yeah, well, thanks, Mike G. I mean, gosh, my books are definitely interwoven. I mean, our lives are just these incredible tapestries where everything seems to be intertwined. And so my books, my first book was called Mountain Mantras, and it's all about life lessons for wellness and for success in life. And it's actually a story. I weave in how I learned to ski and how humbling that was and what I learned, and then how that translated into how we can quickly remember things for being, well and successful in life. You're on my kids' books right there. Those are really my heart projects. So I would find when I would go to schools that kids would get really excited about eating a rainbow of fruits and vegetables. That's why I'm wearing my rainbow things, because really teaching kids about trying new foods and all the colors from Mother Earth, they're all so good for your body in different ways. Well, what we found is we would have these rainbow days and the kids would get all excited, and then we have this bar, a rainbow bar of all these different things that they could try. They could make a rainbow smoothie. They could fill their plate with all different color vegetables. And the parents and teachers said, Kathryn, that made such a difference. We see huge changes, but guess what? It starts to wear off in a couple of weeks. So what we wanted to do was to create some leave behind so the kids could read books about why eating a rainbow is fun, why it's magical, how it helps you in all these different ways. So it's really funny, Mike, all of these things in life, it's like they're all supporting one another. They're all intertwined. They may not be linear, right? Like, I don't think I wrote my kids' books until I had been teaching in the classroom for maybe 8 years. But now I have them today, and they're one of my most fun tools that I get to use.
I really like that and how you approach it, because I've taken a new approach to like fitness, and I used to do this horizontal thing, like the old pyramid of this amount of reps, eat this kind of food. I've went to a vertical process now of integration for my workouts. Now I literally start with the raw material of, okay, what I consume matters and how it's going to affect me a couple hours from now. And, I've gotten better with it as with age. But, I noticed in schools is that we have gotten away from really building the nutritional pyramid that we had back in the early 90s, when they were really starting to break foods up into food groups. But we also realized, even though we were breaking them in food groups, that they were still unhealthy to some degree. So as you look at some of the stuff that you're working on and in your kids' books and the dynamics, how is that playing over to adults? And as you do your mental healthness, you do mental health discussions on your podcast, you do wellness on your podcast, you talk about yoga on your podcast, you talk about getting outside and hiking. And so how do you roll all that in to when you're talking to board members, because you also do a lot of board members and speak with different groups. So how do you do that?
Yeah, so it's all about, putting on different hats and then really trying to understand what your audience, whether it's a group of little kids or whether it's a group of board members, really could benefit from. Like, what are their needs? And so, we were talking about flowing from children to parents. So a lot of times what kids really need is they need to be heard, seen, understood, right? They need to feel like they can make a difference too. So one of the things that I have seen with kids, and this is behind the scenes, if I hear that maybe there's an issue between a parent and a child, like say the parent is saying, oh, my kid is such a picky eater and all Tommy eats is just, this one food and he won't try anything else. He's so picky. Okay, so what I try to do is I step back from that. And I think this is helpful, guys, in everything that we do, is first of all, to see that, let's say I'm talking to the child, as seeing that child as being whole and perfect and doing the best he or she can. Then I start to look at how can that child be part of a solution. So then I might say to Tommy, gosh, your mom and your dad, they're really they want to get more fit. Your mom's going to be doing this, 3K or something. How do you think you might be able to help your mom and dad in their health goals? And you know what? When you turn that around from Tommy being that problem child, that picky eater, to being part of the solution, to asking how he or she can contribute, everything shifts. And then what happens is something happens in between, the parent child, and it could be between, a couple, it could be between members of a team in a Fortune 100 company. But when everybody starts to shift away from the problem and move towards how each of us are part of a solution and supporting each other, it is like a virus that's a positive thing, meaning it's very infectious. It's the positivity starts to just build upon itself. So that's Mike, you talked about the psychology of it. What that really is all about is that's about positive psychology and how we communicate with people. There's a Dr. Lasada who came up with the Lasada line that talked about how many positive things ideally are said for each one negative thing. And just say, oh, you're such a picky eater. Like, that's a negative thing. I would need to say 3 things to that child to neutralize that, what happened with that negative comment. To really make that relationship work, I need to say 6 things, 6 positive things, up to 11. So it's really, again, whether it's, children among themselves, or if it's children and parent, or it's a boardroom, it's really about watching one's language and shifting more to the positive, to the solution, and away from, this is the problem and you're a part of it, and I'm pointing my finger at you. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. It does make sense. So pretty much do you see it more of a fragile development for the kids though? Like, you can't really be too direct. So it's just a fragile development to kids. Do you even work with adults as well? Or you just work with kids?
Oh, no. I absolutely work with adults. And, I think
Different
we're
worlds?
Sorry?
2 different worlds, I bet, huh?
But the thing is we are actually so much the same. And in fact, I wish we could start to see ourselves truly as just being grown-up kids. And by the way, it wasn't that long ago that we grew up. We were talking in the pre-interview chat about laughing, and you guys are so good at like your jokes and laughing. The average kid laughs about 400 times a day. What do we think the average adult does? I'm going to have you guys guess.
2 times a day, maybe.
1.
Yeah. I mean, it's less than 10, 2, 4, something like that. And there's such a huge benefit to having that mindset, whether it's the mindset of let's have fun with this, let's learn. There's also this idea of having a beginner's mindset and just being open. I mean, if you walk into the room and you think you have the answer, then what can you possibly learn from any interaction that you have? So I just tend to think, whether I'm working with, boardrooms of Fortune 100 companies, or if I'm working with, a gathering at a community gathering where we're talking about nutrition, I just remember that we're all just grown up kids in the workplace as adults. And a lot of the things that drove us as kids are still driving us today. So we have to be very, very sensitive to that.
You know, all right, you make a good point because
Gotta be kids.
yeah, okay, so I have a infectious habit of smiling, and my mother has it too. And so my mom and me had this long discussion a while back about it, and she was like, it got me in a lot of trouble because even in tough situations, I have a tendency to smile and say, you know what, we'll work it out. So when I was in Iraq a couple of times, there were some dicey situations, and so one of my soldiers asked us, "Why are you always smiling?" I said, "Look," I said, every moment is a blessing, and I just have fun with those moments. And so I don't see the thing of being, down in the dumps, being Debbie Downer. And so I realized when you talk about adults not smiling, it's so funny. When I was on active duty as a general, I would see everybody running around being stoic, and that's just not my personality to be stoic all the time, because I found that when I smiled, it made other people calmer. It made other people make me approachable. It made other people be able to talk to me about things they normally wouldn't talk to a person at my level about. So I'm going to concur with you 100%. But the next thing I want to touch on, and Mike, throw it up real quick, is her podcast. Real quick, throw them up, so I can get through this, because, hey guys, if you haven't checked out Mountain Mantra or Kat's podcast, they are rocking, and you go on her website and just check them out because they are really, really good, and the information is dynamic. So Kat, tell me, how did you get Mountain Mantra? Because that I was trying to wow, that's a different term. So kind of tell me, Mike, how did you come up with the concept, and then what made you launch the platform?
Absolutely. Thanks so much for asking. And thanks so much. I'm so glad. Isn't it so great when you find out from your viewers or your listeners that people are enjoying the content? It just makes my day. So thank you. And so Mountain Mantras it was actually the title of my first book. And I didn't know until I had written the book and I was working with a publisher. We had a different name. It was actually going to be called The Smile Advantage. It's so funny. And one day I went to yoga, and this is sort of a great takeaway for people listening, is that when they're struggling and they're pushing and they're trying to get something done, I was trying to figure out what a better title for this book was. And finally I went, you know what? Forget it. I'm just going to go to yoga class and relax. And I went through my yoga class, and it was when I was lying on the floor in Shavasana, and I had nothing in my brain at all. And I was just lying there and went, oh, Mountain Mantras. That's going to be the title of my book, because what it is, it's a mantra is basically just like a short saying that you can kind of anchor into to keep you going. And that was what I had in my book about skiing and wellness and life. And I like that so much. When I interview people on my podcast, there's 45 minutes of information, but I'm able to kind of take away maybe 3, 6, 9, 12 mantras. And they're just these really short takeaways, so people can just get the mantras from the interview and implement that in their life.
There it is. I mean, I must say that was enlightenment, I guess, came on you. But that's fine. Wow. So how do you get motivated to do your podcast? I see you have a lot of shows. How do you fit that in your schedule? How do you do that?
I don't need any motivation for that. I absolutely love my podcast so much. I mean, I would do that morning, lunch and night if I could. It's one of those things, we need motivation for other things, but that one is just like the little kid in the candy store. I just can't wait to get onto my podcast.
I like the variety of guests you have. Me and Mike were going through it the last couple of days. I like the different. It's just the variety of guests you have on there and subjects that you discuss. But the one thing that you always impact on is people's mental health. So let's talk about the mental health part, post-COVID, pre-COVID. Because this is not the first time in our history that we've dealt with pandemics. However, this is the first time in our history that we've had the tools to help people overcome their anxieties after a pandemic. And so kind of how did you, when the pandemic happened, just walk me through from when the pandemic happened, how you started seeing the world differently.
Oh my gosh, it's so interesting that the start of the pandemic around March of 2020 was right when I was in the middle of interviewing a lot of people in the world of brain spotting. And brain spotting is a mental health therapy. It also involves somatic healings or somatic I don't want to use Peter Levine's word, but his word is somatic experiencing, which is like allowing the body to guide you towards, what might be next, right? And being open to uncertainty. But it was actually March of 2020 when I interviewed the founder of Brain Spotting. And what he said to me was, in one of his key principles of brain spotting, which, by the way, do you guys want me to just do like a quick explanation of what brain spotting is?
Absolutely.
I was about that.
So it is a mental health therapy. If you've heard of EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization, I can't remember actually EMDR, but you actually track something with a therapist, and it's using the eye movement to allow different files or memories in the brain to kind of open up and get resolved. I know it sounds really, really crazy, but it really, really works. And so what brain spotting does is it combines this eye movement or a fixed eye location is really what brain spotting is more about, with somatic experiencing. Again, it allows people to just process things. They don't really have to talk about things, which I think is a great thing. In fact, Vince, that's been used in a lot of situations where, veterans have had PTSD and they don't really want to talk about the situation, but they can come back and they can process it in silence with the therapist through brain spotting. So with the whole pandemic, when I was talking to David Grand, what he reminded me of was a few key things. One is that uncertainty is very, very difficult for human beings. So just being able to understand that we're not alone, that we feel uncertain, and that's very uncomfortable, I think is very important. The other thing, there's two more things. The second one is that what this pandemic created for us was basically an existential trauma, meaning we all these questions like, why am I here? How long am I here? Like, what are these things that are happening in this world? The pandemic really triggered a lot of the sort of existential thinking and trauma that we were having as a community as a whole. But here's the key thing, is that it also opened up, this whole circumstance opened up the possibility of change, meaning we know that we can't stay constant. There is nothing as constant as change. So can we come out of this whole thing a better version of ourselves? Can we go inside and do some inner work? Because that's where it really starts, so that we can show up as better versions of ourselves for each other, so we can come out of this pandemic on the other side. So that to me was kind of where I was at with mental health, with pandemic, and with brain spotting in particular. But if I can be part of a movement, the three of us, to remove the stigma that people have of mental illness, and instead just be aware that we are all part of this. This is, like an existential crisis across the globe, and then try to figure out how we can support each other so that we can move through this and hopefully come out better on the other side.
Yeah, Mike, you got anything on that one? Because we're talking mental health.
It was true. It was true, because I've seen a lot of people we all seen a lot of people, I should say, that were closed in for 30 days or something in the house. So that can right there, we're not really trained for that. We're not really used to that. We're used to getting up and getting out the house. So I could imagine how I'm pretty sure the world has changed because of all this. And you being a PhD, you can read this, and I'm pretty sure you're helping a lot of people as well that have gone through it, and I can see where you can get the enlightenment of helping, because you can see the change in people. I think people are more closed in right now as ever before. Am I wrong, you think? Miss Kathryn?
Yeah.
Are we closed in more than usual?
Yeah, I think it's a tough question. I think, there's all different sides to the picture or to the sphere, or this multifaceted thing that we're looking at. But I would say, on the negative side, that I am sensing more fear. And I think what we have to remember is that, the opposite of fear, or the thing that really helps us to get out of fear, is love, right? So if we can move just a little bit from that fear and infuse that with love until it really is more love than fear, that is where I will start really, really clicking my heels and getting really excited. I'm optimistic, though. I'm optimistic that what we see in people retreating could potentially be that people are taking more time to be introspective. You know, if there's ever been a time to start a meditation practice or mindfulness practice, it's absolutely now. Taking times to cook meals at home, because the dinners and things out, that we used to have aren't as available, but that can almost be a meditative practice, chopping vegetables and things like that. So the optimistic part of me says there's a lot of fear, but the antidote to that is love.
Absolutely. I like that. I like that. Yeah, as you look at our society now and the challenges that we face with the pandemic, let's just talk globally, all right? Globally, that people have to change, and and they had to make adjustments. And it's sad that we've lost a lot of people during this time, but this is not the first time in history that, because at the Black Plague, I think that 50% of the European population in England was pretty much wiped out from that plague. So I mean, we've done a lot better. Yes, I think the mental health piece is going to be a challenge, but I think this generation of youth, now that they've grown up in it, they've seen it, I think they'll have better tools in their bag to deal with things down the road. I mean, I don't know your perspective, but I truly believe that we're always resilient, but we still have to do a couple things. We got to get outside. We got to breathe. We got to walk. We got to breathe the air. And then we just have to do a lot better job at face-to-face meetings. It's easy to be reserved in this environment now. And I think face-to-face engagements really help people heal. And that's just my take on that one, Kat. So what's your thoughts?
Oh, I am so optimistic, by the way, about the younger generation. I mean, so you were talking about your 17-year-old and you've got some older kids, but that is the generation that is, I really think they're going to turn this thing around. I mean, they don't have any of these petty grudges, and they want a peaceful planet. They want a healthy planet, and they want an open-minded planet. And you know what? They don't have a lot of tolerance for closed-mindedness. So I'm excited to see that generation come into more power, to have, when I say power, I mean, to be heard, to really be seen, to really be making a difference, because I think it's going to be great for everyone.
I agree. I think the new generation is coming into a new time, a new dimension, a new shape of form, a new mindset. I agree with you on that. That's perfectly said. I appreciate that, Kathryn. I thought I was the only one that thought like that. Wouldn't you?
Isn't it great?
That's what we have here.
It's so exciting.
All right. Yeah. So as we keep shaping the world, Kat, I'm just going to say this. You are, as we get ready to wind down here, I'm just going to say we really appreciate you coming on. You are just this most vibrant ball of energy that keeps making a difference. And so before we go, if someone wants to get in contact with you, how do they do it?
Absolutely. So you can just go to makeeverythingfun.com. There's all kinds of fun stuff. So you can look around there, all free courses and resources and the podcast and recipes. So go have fun there. And if you want to reach out to me, there's a contact page. And I actually, it comes right to me. So I do get that. And I would be thrilled to be in touch. And what an honor to be with you guys. I am so thrilled with what you've done with Coastal Connection. I'm honored to be the mountain woman that got to come in and bring that mountain fresh air to you guys. But what you're doing in implementing this program and creating change in the world, it's just fantastic. So I'm honored.
Oh, thanks. Hey, Mike, you got anything before we sign off, brother?
Kathryn, it's been a pleasure. You have a lot of things dynamically happening. I'm going to start checking your podcast now, because you check our podcast and we all check each other's podcast. And it was a pleasure, as always.
Thanks, Mike. You're awesome.
I'm going to keep retweeting your podcast. I'm going to keep retweeting your podcast on a regular basis, like I do on Twitter and then on Facebook. And you know what? I appreciate you coming on. Tell Alexander to do his homework.
I will. Yeah, you heard me talking before about staying off the internet, but yeah, we gotta be good role models to this, is because that's that generation. That generation's going to grow up, but the more that we can model good things to them, the better. And so what we always say, Kat, before we get out here, keep it
rolling. Until next time, everybody. See you later, man. See you later.
Bye.